Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I am Alejandra Fernandez, Policy Analyst here at the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, also known as ATSE. To begin, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from where I am joining today, from the beautiful Ngunnawal country. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I would also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Before we get on to today's webinar, I want to start with a little bit of housekeeping. We would like to remind all attendees that they have agreed to abide by ATSE's Code of Conduct, including as you enter your questions into the Q&A channel. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available on ATSE's YouTube channel shortly after today's session. We're also happy to send that link through to all registrants. Captions are also available, so if you require them, they should pop up at the bottom of your screen. As the session progresses, a feedback survey will be shared in the chat, so please take a moment to complete it. We are keen for this to be an interactive session, so please be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen at any point throughout the webinar. Before I hand over to today's moderator and our brilliant panelists, I thought I'd share a little bit about me. Like your esteemed panelists, I too have a science background, more specifically in biomedical research. During my PhD, I explored DNA damage repair pathways and new therapeutical alternatives for the treatment of non-small cell lung cancer. Now at ATSE, I collaborate with Academy Fellows to produce policy outputs where we provide evidence-based advice to government. My story in STEM started when I was in 6th grade. I had a great teacher who made biology and chemistry fun and interesting, and that's when I realized that I wanted to do something related to those subjects as a career. Today, this wonderful webinar series is brought to you by ATSE's education initiative Stellar, which is designed to encourage young people to get excited about STEM at schools by using hands-on curriculum-aligned resources to explore the principles of sustainable engineering, something that's very relevant now. I'm excited to introduce other programs from ATSE that facilitate and promote accessibility and inclusivity in STEM. We provide scholarships for women and non-binary people to access STEM education at Australian universities through ATSE's Elevate Boosting Diversity in STEM Scholarship Program, and we have today one of our wonderful scholars joining us. Also, we invest in people through our Industry Mentoring Network STEM program, where PhD students and early career researchers are paired with influential industry leaders. As Professional Learn Academy, we understand the relevance of support to thrive in STEM education and careers. ATSE offers continuous support from high school to help you achieve your STEM career goals in the future. All our activities in policy and program delivery reflect ATSE's embodied missions to create inclusive and equitable practices in STEM. The theme for today's session is Water in a Warming World. As part of this session, we will explore the significant contributions and pathways our incredible speakers have navigated so that we can better prepare our water infrastructure and systems for a warming world. In my role as policy analyst, I have the privilege of working closely with ATSE's water experts, which includes Professor Stuart Kahn, the facilitator of today's discussion. He is an ATSE fellow and an esteemed environmental engineer and advocate for public health, renowned for his significant contributions to improving water quality across Australia. Stuart leverages his expertise in water management to address community challenges with creativity and innovation. Currently serving as professor and head of the School of Civil Engineering at the University of Sydney, Professor Kahn's remarkable achievements extend to his roles as an adjunct professor at University of UNSW, Faculty of Engineering, and as Hans Fischer Fellow at the Technical University of Munich, Germany. Without further ado, I would like to invite Stuart to begin the keynote for today's event. So over to you, Stuart.
Thanks, Alejandra, and welcome to everybody joining. Welcome to the students and their teachers and other members of our community that are joining us today. I'm joining from Gadigal land in Sydney at the University of Sydney, so the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I pay my respects to their elders past and present. So as we gather on the eve of International Water Day tomorrow, let's take this opportunity to reflect on shaping a world that prioritizes water security, ensuring access to clean, safe water for all. It's a chance to envision a world where water resources are managed sustainably and equitably. And this is particularly crucial in science, technology, engineering, and maths, the STEM fields, where innovation plays a vital role in addressing water challenges. Remember, it's your bright ideas and curious minds that will pave the way for a new generation of water guardians, engineers, and technology trailblazers. So ATSI is committed in our mission to cultivate a skilled workforce and to safeguard Australia's water resources and ensure a secure water future for all, while lifting participation from people of diverse genders and backgrounds so that they can not only access STEM education, but also pursue a fun and rewarding career in STEM. So we believe that each of you who join us today has the potential to mitigate and reinforce the water future of Australia in a warming world. ATSI Fellows believe that supporting access to STEM education from school through to university is critical for unlocking all of Australia's potential so that we can help Australians understand and use technology to solve complex problems. So I was asked to give you a little bit of insight to my own STEM journey. So I have one slide here that tells you a little bit about my personal history. That slide, the picture in the top left corner there is my mother holding me up in my first home, which was at a place called Emerald Beach near Coffs Harbour in New South Wales. And you can see the ocean out behind me. And I remember standing pretty much where she is, looking out to the ocean. And people pointing out the spurts from whales out in the ocean and being amazed that there were whales going by our house. As you can see from the photo below that, I spent a lot of time at the beach, and the beach was very important to me as a child growing up. And then in the 1980s, I was just finishing high school, and there was suddenly a lot of talk about building a new ocean outfall to discharge sewage off that headland at Emerald Beach. It's called Look at Me Now Headland. And there was one particular person on our local council who was opposed to that idea. And he said, we shouldn't be discharging sewage out into this pristine marine environment. We should be treating that water and reusing it in a beneficial way. And a lot of people called him crazy. And he was told it was far too expensive, but eventually many people in the community started to agree, and there were big protests going on. You can see people protesting around the bulldozer out on the headland here, starting to put in the pipes. And that alerted me to this idea that maybe we should be thinking about some of the things that are currently a waste problem, an environmental problem, we should be thinking about as a potential future resource that we can make good use of. And then as it happened, I went to Sydney University and I studied chemistry and water engineering. And a big part of my career has actually been about exactly this, about taking sewage, taking wastewater, purifying that wastewater for various uses. Now we can use that we can purify it to a degree that we can actually use it for drinking, and thinking more about a circular economy and a circular use of resources rather than a one-way conveyor belt of resources becoming waste and then being discharged to the environment. So that was my journey. I still work in wastewater. I still work in water recycling. And as Alejandra said, I'm now head of School of Civil Engineering at the University of Sydney. And that's a very important part of my STEM journey. So I'm now delighted to introduce our next speaker, Celia Brown. Celia is an engineering professional who has combined around 5 years in water networks and operations at various organisations in the water industry. With her wealth of experience, Celia possesses a profound understanding of the complexities within water infrastructure systems. Fueled by her natural inclination for problem solving, she is dedicated to enhancing and perfecting these systems. In her current role as Sewerage Network Operation Engineer at Icon Water in the ACT, Celia applies the best practices to maintain public health and environmental sustainability. Over to you, Celia.
Thank you, Stuart. I would also like to acknowledge that I am speaking from Ngunnawal country, my home here in Canberra, where I also grew up. And that is how I will start on this journey, is how I started here. How did I get to where I am? So like Stuart, a lot of us here in Australia grew up mostly near water. I in Canberra did not. One of the reasons I got into really being keen on working in the environment was that I grew up during the Millennium Drought, where there was not enough water, and I experienced the 2003 Canberra bushfires, which were pretty devastating here, and realised, we live in a country where water really is a precious resource, and I'd like to get into working on how to make that better. During high school, I was good at science, and I'm sure a lot of people who are good at science and maths get told you should go into engineering. So I went to a women in engineering camp held by University of Wollongong. There are lots of universities that do these all around, and it was a really good experience to meet current and past uni students and engineers and PhD students about what they're doing. The photo on the right is the Seacliff Bridge near Wollongong, and we went inside that and were able to talk about how that was constructed. However, as cool as that was, I went, you know what, building bridges isn't for me. That's all cool. So I chose chemical engineering and went to UNSW in Sydney. What I loved about doing that is that they had a flexible first year. So if I got partway through that, I could have decided to leave chemical engineering and go to civil and work with Stuart. But I stuck to my guns, what I chose at 18, which you don't have to, but I stuck with chemical engineering and eventually ended up in a placement at Icon Water, where I've now returned here in Canberra, and they took me on as my last year at uni, and that really got me interested in the water industry. So I'd applied to them, and then working with them is where I went, yes, this is where I belong. I spent quite a lot of time at one of our 2 water treatment plants. We tend to have one on at a time, and I was there what they call a Christmas beetle, where you're there over the summer period for my industry placement, which is something all engineers will have to do. And I encourage, even if you're not interested in going into engineering, to look into work experience as much as possible, because it can either cement you into what you want to do, like it did me, or it can make you go, again, that's not for me. I went into that bridge and went, this is cool, but I want things that move a little bit more, and I don't want bridges to move, thanks. So I followed around the operators at the plants, learned how valuable they are, helped them with labs, and did a review of their gas chlorine dosing system. So a really good experience that I could apply my engineering degree to. I then finished my degree there and then got onto the Sydney Water graduate program. So I finished my degree at UNSW in Sydney, went to go work at Sydney Water, which is the middle and the left photos. The middle photo is from Bondi Wastewater Treatment Plant, which, like Stuart said, it does have an ocean outfall, but they do treat it before it goes out. And that photo is from the edge of their plant, where you would have to get a helicopter to come get you. So a really cool experience to be out on site and see how things work, and experience being that close to water and making sure that amazing beach there that I love and is very, very public, I'm sure we've all seen Bondi Rescue, stays pristine. One of the cool things that I then did, speaking of helicopters, as you can see on the photo on the left, we had a sewer main break in a really difficult bit of bushland. We couldn't even drive a car to near where this was. So for us to then fix this, we had to use a helicopter to get everything into site to fix it. So this is where I really grew my love of being on site, seeing how things work, and really problem solving out in the field. COVID then turned up, and I got a job back at Icon Water where my family is. So I grew up here. So hence why I'm back at Icon Water, being our sewer network operations engineer, the only one here in Canberra. So it's really good to have that responsibility and a lot of flexibility in being able to solve any problem that comes up in this network. It's been really good to apply things that I learned in Sydney, both in my degree and also at Sydney Water. I've been able to build what we call the poo boat, which is a floating camera that we can use to inspect our sewers. And that has been really useful in avoiding people going down underground when they don't have to, which is amazing for our safety, and also helps me get eyes on what's happening in the sewer network. So it helps us try and keep, for me, it's not so much oceans. For me, it's keeping Lake Burley Griffin nice and clean. It's really important that I know what those sewers look like, and getting out there and launching it and working, problem solving how it should look and how we get it back at the end of the day so it doesn't end up at the treatment plant is a really thrilling part of my job that I love doing. I still get to do engineering things. I work on my coding skills in the background and work on automating a lot more of the stuff that we used to do by hand. Get really good at Excel, kids, although I'm sure that it will be a totally different thing by the time you get here. The more I can automate in the office, the more I can get out in the field. So for me, that's a really good motivator. I love being in the field and doing the practical things, building things, actually seeing how it works, and feeling like I am part of this utility, which is very much a right and a privilege to be a part of keeping society functioning healthily and keeping the environment enjoyable for generations to come. So thank you, Stuart. I'll pass on so you can move along.
Thanks very much, Celia. So hopefully people will have questions for Celia at the end of the next presentation. So please note that the Q&A tab is open and people can be typing questions into the Q&A tab so that they'll be ready when we get to that point. And you may also see questions that you're interested in that other people have written, and you can upvote those questions as well to ensure that I pass them on to our two panelists. So our next panelist this afternoon is Dr. Mariam Feradzku. Mariam is an early career researcher and a water and environmental engineer. She harnessed the skills she developed during her PhD from the University of New South Wales in 2023 to push the boundaries of eco-hydraulics knowledge. In her current role at Manly Hydraulics Laboratory within the New South Wales Department of Climate Change, Energy, Environment and Water, Mariam is at the forefront of innovation addressing pressing water engineering challenges, including the increased flooding events that we're experiencing in New South Wales. Mariam is also a 2024 ATSI Elevate Leadership Scholar and serves as the chair of the Women of Water community at the Manly Hydraulics Laboratory, tirelessly championing gender equality in STEM. So let's hear from Mariam on her journey so far.
Thank you, Stuart. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mariam, and I'm here to talk you on the journey through the moments that have shaped my passion for water engineering. So the photo in the background is really showing basically everything included in my professional career, including rivers, trees, near rivers and along rivers, and also infrastructure developments. I grew up in Iran, a country with diverse landscapes, including northern seas and southern coast and deserts in between. So I grew up in a family where education was very valued, and my dad worked at the university, and I found the idea of going to the uni in a very childhood stage with him was really fascinating, even though the visits were limited, but I always wanted to spend more time there. And also, like, when I was listening to my dad's lectures, I could picture myself going to uni and make my future in the best way that I could. So from a young age, always I was fascinated by rivers, and listening to flow was really relaxing for me. But when looking at the water flow, on the other hand, I had a few questions in my mind always. I wondered where the river originated from, or why floods occurred or could happen, or other questions like what impact of damming can have for people and downstream environment. So this early curiosity about water system and engineering set the stage for my journey into water engineering. During my high school years, my passion for mathematics and physics always led me to concentrate on these subjects and follow these interests. But in order to gain the admission to uni, I had to take a national entrance exam covering all the courses studies you studied like in the school years. And depending on the ranking, you would be eligible for the desired major. But fortunately, I met the requirements to pursue my interest, which was water engineering at the university, a top-ranked university in my hometown of Shiraz. I had the chance to research on the water treatment project at the early years of my bachelor program, and this research really like gave me not only the technical skills but also encouraged me to see what I can achieve in the field of engineering and STEM. In the master program, I researched on the favorite topic, which was dispersion of pollution along the rivers. Again, kind of like about like treatment, water treatment projects, but we were particularly focusing on the impact on communities along the water bodies. For example, if we had like a sudden dispersion of pollution and we wanted to understand the dynamics of pollution dispersion, which was really crucial for strategies to mitigate the effect for downstream users. For PhD, I had always dreamed to have this as a special stage of my life as a with a different experience. So I started to look for opportunities in Australia, which was my favorite country, and I was really captured by the PhD topic that was advertised by the University of New South Wales in the Water Research Laboratory. I applied and I was accepted as a Scientia PhD student at the UNSW. So the interesting part of this PhD was a multidisciplinary project between civil school and biology. And where I developed a part of innovative design and that could help fish migration across dams. So with an engineering background, I developed skills in river ecology and fish behavior. And it means that for 4 years, I had almost 200, 300 live fish to do experiment with, and basically to test their behavior. And also like after working 1 year on this project, seeing my photo and my PhD project on Sydney Morning Herald was really encouraging and highlighting the importance of the project in Australia. Even now at work, I could see how industry is investing on fish migration project, which closely resembles the topic of my PhD research. I was graduated in 2023 and I started working as an environmental and water engineering at Manly Hydraulics Laboratory, which is a part of New South Wales Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. I'm doing various industry projects, which are all my passion, including fish migration, hydraulic structures, and more importantly, floods. And I'm working with several numerical modeling, which makes the work even more interesting for me. Just thinking about how these flood projects can help really people to save people from the severe flooding keeps moving me, and it just motivates me for my everyday task. In the supportive environment at MHL to support women in STEM, recently we have launched a women group at MHL where I work with many inspiring women. We call it WOW as Women of Water, and please reach out if you'd like to learn more about this community and join us to celebrate diversity and excellence in here. In 2023, I have finished the year with a very great news of being awarded the prestigious Elevate Leadership Scholarship, which was provided by ATSI. So I think it was the best news to finish off the year. I'm excited to be part of this community and eager to continue making a positive impact in the world of STEM. And yeah, so thank you for having me and allowing to share my journey with you today all.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mariam and Celia, two really inspiring stories there for how you got into this field of water and the amazing things that you've been doing ever since. So remember, people are welcome to ask questions in the Q&A box, and I'll go through and read out the upvoted questions as they come through. So I might start with a question for Celia. So we just heard Mariam talking about flooding and lots of challenges associated with flooding, but you work with sewers. Have you ever had to deal with a flooding sewer? And if you have, how did you make sure that the water that went back into the oceans and the environment was clean afterwards?
I will start with reverberating what SES says, and if it's flooded, forget it. So when the environment floods, the sewers, which are typically underground, can also flood. And while we do keep things flowing as much as possible, I will say that sometimes you don't know what's in floodwater, and there might be a bit of a mix of things, including some of your sewer network. My most extreme experience of this was at Sydney Water during the 2021 floods in both February and March. It seemed to just be constant. Right after the drought ended as well, there was one the year before. Large parts of the network went underwater. A really amazing thing that we do is we put quite a lot of the electrical network above the predicted flood levels so that all the electricity can still keep going, and the pumps continue to go even though they are mostly pumping out flood and river water at that point. So sewer networks can still go underwater and still operate. It just overwhelms the treatment plants. So that is how we can make sure that things going to the environment are the best treated we can offer with whatever flow is coming through. In dry weather, everything works perfectly normally. And in wet weather, they can manage whatever the treatment plant's capacity is. So depending on where that plant is, that might, as we said, go to an ocean outfall, which is what we talked about, after fairly limited treatment sometimes, especially in a large wet weather event. There's a lot of flow coming through, which, as I said, is mostly river water because the network keeps the pumps on, even if the treatment plant can't handle the water. So they do an amazing job at keeping everything together and keeping it in the network, given how much water can get in, as I'm sure you can imagine. But as I will still end with, if it's flooded, forget it. Please don't play in flood water. And we will get things cleaned up as quick as possible. So this was certainly an eye-opening event on how much the extreme wet weather events in both drought, as I said, I grew up with, and wet weather is impacting water supply and the sewer network.
Very good advice from somebody who knows what's in that water. Mariam, have you ever worked on a cool project that helps to make water systems better for the environment while we're experiencing climate change?
Great question, Stuart. So I believe almost all the single water related projects that I have conducted was considering kind of the climate change. For example, in my master program, pollution of dispersion, we were looking at the implementation of nature-based flood control measures with trees on the floodplain to address like the impact of climate change. In this project, we were working on restoring natural floodplains to help dilute the pollution or, for example, slow down the flood waters during the high flow events. So it was a like combination of mitigating impact of pollution and flood in the same project in the world of climate change. Or for example, one aspect of my PhD project was researching on the impact of flow on fish behavior and their entry into fish passage structures. So the flow changes over time because of number of reasons, and one reason is impact of climate change, which will experience like a severe dry season or wet season, and some places, which could impact the fish behavior. And we found that like this change of flow really like can impact on fish behavior and their performance in the fish passages. And very many interesting outcomes came out for Australian native fish species in this regard. And in my professional career at MHL, almost all projects we are considering the effect of climate change, as most projects are on floods and severe weather condition, which is an impact of climate change again.
Thanks, Mariam. A couple of questions coming through on the Q&A, and I will throw to both of you for your view on this first question. But I might have a go at it too, given that I'm a professor of civil engineering. It says, can we study engineering by doing well and not being exceptional in STEM? And the answer to that is, as I'm sure all the panelists know, absolutely yes. Doing well, being interested in STEM is important, but you certainly don't need to be exceptional. I think the key things that you might want to have a look at are what are some of the prerequisites to get into some of the university degrees, and be aware of those early on in selecting your high school subjects and in working your way through those subjects. But you never have to be top of the class. You never have to be doing, none of our engineering degrees require you to be doing the highest level mathematics courses. We require you generally to be competent in these things. So doing well is good, and being interested. Remember that the E in STEM is for engineering. So if you're not interested in engineering, if you're not interested in that, then that's probably not what you should be studying. But if you're enthusiastic, I think it's open for you. Have I left anything to say about that, Celia and Mariam?
I don't
think you
I don't
keep
think
going.
so. Sorry, Mariam. I agree with Stuart that yes, look at the prerequisites, and that kind of answers potentially the next question that's coming as well. And my honest advice is if you look at those prerequisite subjects and think, oh, I can't think anything worse than doing that, then you're allowed to do other things, and that will lead to a career path that probably interests you more. So as I said previously, I looked at bridges and went, is that all engineers do? That's not really my thing, and that's okay. I went on a different path. So there are engineers for everything, as I'm sure you will find, and whatever you pick now will get you to a place that you want to be, as long as you keep picking things that interest you. So if you don't want to be doing maths forever, that's okay. You can do science, and you can be exceptional at STEM without being exceptional in subjects. So yes. Sorry, Mariam, on to you.
No, that's all good. I think like I 100% agree with Stuart and Celia, because I feel you don't need to be really like top a student in the class, and it can be a hinder even. But I'm sure if you are doing like narrowing down what exactly you want from your future, and if you really like know your passion, this passion will keep you moving, and even you can be like you don't need to be, but you can be even like the top student. So I think like the first thing I would say, first find your passion, and then when you find your passion, you'll do it definitely. And you'll
Thank you.
find a way.
And yes, the next question is closely related. What would you say are the most important subjects to study in years 11 and 12 to get into a water career? So that's an interesting question, because there are multiple pathways into a water career. If I look at some of the Icon Water, where Celia works, and some of the other water utilities, I see them hiring university graduates from lots of different courses, not just engineering, but certainly civil engineering and chemical engineering. But they also hire lawyers and accountants and all sorts of people that work in water. I think that, again, it's important to look at the prerequisites. It's important to understand some of the useful degree pathways into a water career. And certainly I can speak best to the engineering pathways. Civil engineers end up working in water, many of them, and as do chemical engineers, and even quite a lot of mechanical and electrical engineers work in water systems and in the water sector. To get into those courses, often it is important to do some maths. As we just said, you don't need to be doing the top levels of maths, but look at the prerequisites. You will do some maths in those courses, so to be prepared for that is a very useful thing. In civil engineering, we encourage students to have done physics in high school. In environmental engineering, another pathway, we encourage the students to have done chemistry. So there are different ways that you can come through and be prepared for those different courses. There's another question that has come through that says, all of you have done different engineering and work in water and the environment. Is that usual in STEM? So is that the case? We've all done different engineering degrees? So Celia, you did a civil engineering degree.
I did chemical. Sorry, I did
You
chemical
did
engineering.
chemical, sorry. Yep. And Mariam did
I did
civil
civil and environmental
and
engineering. Yes.
environmental. Good. Is that unusual in STEM? It's certainly not unusual in water. Who'd like to take that? Where do you think you could have gone with a chemical engineering degree, Celia? And what other people from different degrees might you think would have come across?
A lot of people who did my chemical engineering degree with me would have gone into a lot more processing. So that is working at Tim Tam factory. We were all very jealous of the guy who got to work at Arnott's and bring back Tim Tams and shapes. They went into oil and gas and got to go do FIFO stuff and really work with some of the really big machinery out there. Some went into biomedical as well. So you at UNSW, you certainly to do biomedical, you have to have done another engineering, and that was on how to deliver pills and make pills and medicine. I probably was trained better to be a process engineer at a plant, but I have wound up in a world where I mix a lot of the engineering that I do. So I do a little bit of civil, a little bit of mechanical, a little bit of environmental, and I really like that jack of all trades. So it is certainly not unusual in STEM in general and in water to have a mix of everyone around you. I work with people who have done trades as well. We have water quality teams who have done science and not engineering. And we certainly have people who have only done maths and they work in our analytics team. So it's certainly in the utility space because it has to cover such a broad range. We have a lot of different people that I work with. As you said, lawyers. The Sydney Water Grad Program has science, HR is on it now. They had lawyers and accountants, and everyone is on their grad program. So the water space is open to anyone as long as it's something that makes you happy and you think you want to do. Mariam, your shot at answering that one.
Yeah, absolutely. In civil and environmental engineering, you'll find in future like jobs related to basically environment. It can be inland, it can be coast, or it can be wetlands like estuaries. So and then like then the division will be like a policy or just doing like operational design and this sort of thing. So they vary a lot, and depending on what you like, then you can choose which discipline or which kind of area you would like to continue with it. That's a very short answer for me.
Very good. So when I look at how my area is changing in the work that I'm doing, one of the big influencing factors that's causing change is climate change, and climate change is starting to introduce new risks, new threats, and require new skills. And I wonder if either of you have come across that, where the climate change is starting to really change your role in any way, and whether you've had to adapt and potentially look at things differently or develop new skills to respond.
I can take that one as a utility. We have developed our climate change adaptation plan, which is how we as a business have acknowledged exactly that this is going to start affecting us for both sides. As I said before, both in droughts and where are we going to get water from. And as you said, is wastewater not waste, but a resource that we can use to fuel that. And as I've said, on the other side, there's also more extreme floods can impact how the wastewater network works as well. I saw an interesting graph when we had a whole year of wet weather here in Canberra, where the amount of water coming into our sewer treatment plant was more than we had produced at the water filtration plant that year. So that really showed how much of an impact that ingress problem that I was saying, where assets go underwater and it starts going into them, was really having an impact in that it's supposed to be about 80% of what you use is supposed to end up at the sewer treatment plant, and it actually ended up being the opposite. So we've introduced, and a lot of companies are doing this, a whole climate change adaptation plan where we're looking at how we're going to model this in the future for both extremes. So it's been really interesting to see that developing as we've learned lessons from past events and recent events.
Thanks, Celia. Let me jump to this one. Somebody has asked, what year in high school is ideal to decide what career you want to be in? Do you think we all need to know the answer to what we're doing for the rest of our lives by the age of Any particular age?
Absolutely not.
No, I'll like for my case, like from my like a primary school and then up to high school, I wanted to be a lawyer, which was certainly different to be like an water engineer. But like in 1 year, like I had always passion to water and water engineering, and like as I said, like looking at river flowing and just a lot of questions that I had always in my mind. But as seeing my future was was a lawyer, but in 1 year I just changed my mind, and like the whole so I would say there is not a single moment or a special year that I can tell you'll find your way, but it just happens. Yeah, you just need to be open to everything that comes to you.
Celia, you were telling us, I asked a question about climate change and somebody's asked a follow-on question about that. And I think you might have some experience with this in Canberra, in the ACT.
Yes.
Are bushfires a significant consequence of climate change that might affect your work?
They certainly affect my work. Whether they're an effect of climate change is it's highly likely, because they do tend to dry things out, especially after really wet years, where we now have a lot of green things that if we experience a dry year are going to turn into brown things that can burn. Bushfires definitely affect our work in that they can impact access to reservoirs where we keep the water. They can impact the quality of them, as you can imagine, ash and all the soot ending up in the dams where we collect water then impacts how well we can treat that. And it impacts access to our assets. So if we have pump stations or pipelines that are caught in a fire, they can burn. As I said, we can put switchboards above the flood level, but it doesn't help us if a fire comes through and takes out all the electricity poles, and as I said, limits how we can get people there safely. So we will always take safety first, and if an asset's impacted, we're not going to send a person there if they're going to be in danger. But it's certainly, I've had bushfire awareness training for this exact reason. We all have woolen blankets and fire extinguishers in our cars, and setting fires is something we need to be aware of. There's a thing called a hot work permit, where if you're doing any activity that might start a fire, you really have to be aware of it, because a lot of our assets can be in the middle of bushland and you don't want to be the person to start it. So it's definitely something that we're seeing a lot more awareness come up on. So I think it's a good education piece.
How about you, Mariam? Have bushfires impacted the work that you do, the infrastructure or the fish that you're trying to look after?
Bushfires, not really, but I think the only like a closed area that I can think of within the bushfire that can affect it's gonna be water quality issues. As Celia mentioned, was about ash, and it's again I would say like that's gonna be like a multidisciplinary project which requires engineering and biology and also fish health as well. So when bushfires can create like a lot of black waters and low quality water, so it's gonna affect fish, and we may waking up with the news like hundreds of fish like they died in one river just because of low quality and after bushfires, unfortunately.
Terrible
Yeah.
it was. We've got about 1 minute left, so I'm going to see if I can get a real quick answer from both of you on this one last question. So one piece of advice. What's the one piece of advice that you would give to people who are interested in following your path in your field of occupation? Would you like to go first, Mariam?
Yeah, absolutely. I just thinking about do your best and don't think about much about your future, and then follow the passion. That's gonna be my advice.
I agree with that. You can have your eyes on an end goal, but as long as you are picking the things that you enjoy and you're enjoying what you do, you're on the right path. It doesn't matter where you get to. So I think that's what I'll leave with, and I certainly enjoy what I do, which makes coming to work a lot easier.
Thanks, Celia and Mariam. It's been a great discussion. I've really enjoyed speaking to you and hearing about your life experiences. And as small a proportion of them as you've had so far, you've got a long way to go in, I'm sure, what will be a very enjoyable and successful career for both of you. So thanks very much. And with that, I'd like to hand back to Alejandra to close the session.
Thanks, Stuart, and thank you to all presenters for sharing insights into your journey in STEM and for the excellent discussions. Also, I would like to thank all of you for joining us from your classrooms today. We hope that this session has left you with a better idea of the different careers that you can pursue in water and how this can contribute to preparing us for a warming world. Some good news, there will be more Shape Your Future sessions running this year, with the next one being in term 2. So please consider joining us again to hear more exciting conversations. Our next session will be on World Bee Day and will include STEM professionals who are working in the fascinating world of agriculture. A final quick reminder, we have added a link in the chat for a short survey. Your feedback is important to us, and we're keen to ensure this series is interesting and engaging, so please take a few minutes to complete it. Apart from that, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.